So I don't know how big of a story this was outside of kind of the local underground news scene here in Chicago, man, but there was a 14-year-old that was shot and killed last weekend over a very violent weekend overall. There was one incident where there was 20 people shot in one particular incident at a Juneteenth party out in it was a town outside Chicago, but this particular shooting, though, was one that I wanted to focus on, even though there was, like, within the city limits itself, there was 75 people shot total that weekend. But this was on the west side over in the 100 block of South Homan. The 14-year-old boy that was killed was apparently a rapper or some type of like burgeoning rapper. He was starting to get into that. And he was claiming a set that was on the south side. So what he was doing over there out west, I don't know. But most of the sources from this are from social media. So, take everything with a grain of salt, because when it comes to 14-year-olds, too, I can tell you, I didn't work with too many 14-year-olds. I was in high school, so, the youngest that I usually work with was 15. But a lot of 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, what they claim and, like what they're into is kind of fluid. It's not really well defined. You'll have guys that are just claiming one thing one day, and then the next day, oh, no, I'm not with that stuff. Or, like they'll say things like, well, I'm not a GD, I just hate Stones, or I'm not a Vice Lord, I just hate the GDs or something. It's like this stuff these days. It's not like it was back in the day where you have to go through this whole ritual, get jumped in, learn the literature and all that kind of stuff. So what these guys claim, when they say they claim something, you got to take that with a grain of salt, even if the source is the person themselves. So I just want to preface this with that. So anyways, this young man's name was Timothy. He was 14 years old. He rapped and went by the name Little Tuda. And apparently he was claiming some set by 72nd and Rockwell called DMG, Dirty Money Gang. So he was shot and killed right in the middle of the day around 4:45 p.m. In the 100 block of South Homan. And this was the second 14-year-old rapper that was killed within the last year's span. There's another one that I'm going to talk about later on in the video named Little Ronald. But I want to talk about this issue of these real young kids like getting into this rap stuff. They've been in the gang stuff, but I mean the rap thing with the social media these days and putting a increased spotlight on these young kids, like real young, man. So anyways, the media was reporting, though, that a 14-year-old rapper who performs under the name Lil Tuda was shot and killed in Chicago over the weekend. They said he and another boy were both shot on Saturday, with the other boy remaining in critical condition. So who was the target? I don't know, but pronounced dead at Stroger Hospital. That's a spot you guys have seen in a lot of my videos. I don't have footage for it in this video, but if you've been on my channel for a while, you've seen Stroger. I'm always over there by UIC Stroger. That's like the medical district over there, and a lot of the West Side gunshot victims either go there or Mount Sinai. But he was pronounced dead at Stroger, and the community activist Andrew Holmes, shout out to him, he does a lot of good work. He described the event as a tragedy. He said that he noted particularly that this was occurring over the Juneteenth weekend, and he further called on Little Tuda's killers to be brought to justice. He said, Father's Day, Juneteenth, celebrating for what? He went on to discuss some black community issues that I'm not going to comment on in this video, but he said, until we get these individuals in custody, he said, then come and talk to me. But he said, we got two babies here. So the information that was put out about his gang affiliation was made by an account on Twitter that calls itself the 16th and 17th District Chicago Police Scanner. That I do not believe is an official Chicago Police account. It's just somebody who, is using that name. Like it's similar to Spot News, a scanner that just kind of is an independent worker on Twitter. So don't attribute that to the police. Whether or not the police actually had him down as a documented gang member, I don't believe that they did. I do not believe that they did. So this is just on social media. So like I said, this is the second 14-year-old we had this year. Back in April, there was another rapper named Little Ronald, and this is a story that's a little bit more complicated. He was also 14, and he apparently had moved to Chicago from the suburb of Waukegan, and that's what I'm going to talk about. But as far as Little Tuda, where exactly he stayed at, I don't know. But if he was from out south, and then to be hanging out west, a lot of guys, I don't know if he was the target or if the other person that he was with was the target or if it was just mistaken identity or what it was, man. But 14 years old, When these guys start to rap, this is a debatable issue, whether or not they've actually done anything in the streets or not. But like to me, when guys start to rap, it increases the number of points that the other side is going to get for killing them. That's just my observation. Some people argue with me about that the rapping stuff doesn't really count for that kind of thing. But I mean, in my view, because today it's all about clout. This is coming out in the Goonie Boss trial right now. Like, it's all about clout with these kids, man. Like, they're really not getting any money off of these hits or anything. It's mainly about clout. There's some, like, hits for hire and stuff, but the vast majority of this stuff is, like, the only thing they're getting is clout. And, when a kid makes a name for himself rapping, the clout the other side is going to get for killing him goes up. Even if he hasn't done anything to them, even if he hasn't killed any of them or anything like that. But so he was also 14. According to his older sister, his life changed a lot when his mother died. She said, quote, a part of him left with her. So that's tough to lose, one's mom at an early age. And that type of thing will change the way that these kids are, man. I've seen that happen. So they said that his family couldn't afford a party for him on his 14th birthday, but they still came together to celebrate. They said it had not been easy for Ronald, who lost his mother the previous spring and had to leave his home in Waukegan and move in with relatives on the south side. So his mom was living in Waukegan. Waukegan, for people that are not from Illinois, is a town to the north of Chicago. I would say about a 40-minute drive, like up to Edens. It's got gangs and stuff, and it's got some, crime problems and things of that nature, but it's nowhere near on the level of like Chicago's South Side, nowhere near. I would say that if a person has the option of staying in Waukegan, that option is better. Even I would even say it's better to stay there than it is to come to the north side of Chicago because, like I said, the layout of Waukegan is a lot more spread out. You do have like some communities where there's like, apartment buildings close together, but compared to Chicago, which is like highly concentrated and you got these gangs real close to each other, like literally on the next block from one another. Waukegan is a lot safer. I think the layout of Waukegan prevents it from kind of escalating to the point where Chicago is at, man. But anyways, they said it hadn't been easy for him after he lost his mom and then he had to move to Chicago. So his sister said, when we moved and my mom passed away, everything changed. His whole life changed. And she said a part of him left with her. So, the south side of Chicago, that's an area where just off of where you live, you're going to have some group of guys that is into it with you. Even if you're not into, even if you have no intention of getting on that with anybody, if you live over here, like if you're from over there, then you're from over there. Like when those guys come through a lot, that's another thing that's coming out in this Goonie trial. Like they were just catching anybody that was walking outside. So that's one of the main reasons suburbs is always better. But the afternoon of April 20th, just 4 days after his birthday, he was in a car over on 80th, like the 2300 block of East 80th, when someone shot him in the chest. He was pronounced dead at South Shore Hospital down the block. His sister said he was a baby. She said, I wanted to go with my brother, but I've got to be strong. I can't think like that. 2 days before he was killed, there was a girl who was 14, same age, named Charity. She was shot on the west side just 2 days before her 15th birthday. So Ronald and his sister grew up in Waukegan, and after their mother died, he went to live with his older brother while the sister was struggling to find housing. So he had started 8th grade at a new school in Chicago, but he didn't know many of the kids, according to his sister. His sister wanted him to move back to the suburbs, but she said that he liked living in the city, and I've seen that. I've seen that, man. Some of the kids like being here better. The thing is, they have a very limited perspective on that. There's been kids that have, told me that the action and everything that's going on in Chicago is more fun to be around. But the thing is, when that action touches them, then there's no tomorrow to enjoy it. I mean, that action, it might bring some kind of a rush or a thrill, but not to the people getting killed, you know what I'm saying? So he said that he liked rapping and he wanted to pursue a career in music. So a lot of social media blogs covered his killing, and they said that he went by the name Lil Ronald. So a lot of the posts that were made on social media apparently were upsetting for the sister to see. And she said that her brother liked to rap a lot in his free time, but she said that he went to class every day. He said, you've got this 13-year-old child walking around who lost his mom, and it's taking a toll on him. He said, it's hard. Your whole life has changed. You've got to go through many things that you don't want to go through as a child. And she's right. So they organized some balloon releases at his old school in Waukegan and at his new school on the south side. And as the oldest sibling in the family, his sister organized services for him. And she was working to find money for a repast, even as she remained homeless and in search of housing. So she said the police haven't given her any update on the killing as of the time that the Sun-Times reported this story, but this was several months ago, and it remains under investigation. The sister was right. This has happened with a lot of kids, man. D. Wade is probably the most famous case that I can think of. This, his sister, I think it was also his older sister, took him from his home in Chicago and dropped him off with his dad in the suburbs and then just left. Like without his permission, just dropped D. Wade off there because she knew that if he grew up in the city, he was going to be around the gangs and, you know, the peer pressure. I can't even describe, like the people that haven't been around that, how insanely intense the peer pressure is to get involved in gangs in Chicago, like on the south side. I mean, it's practically like you're in it anyways, you know, like just if you live on this one particular block, it's like a lot of guys are just going to see what's being in that anyways. I mean, unless you want to have no friends, never talk to anybody, just sit over there in a corner by yourself, you're going to associate with somebody that's in a gang, and then everybody that's into it with him is now into it with you. It's literally like unavoidable. Like people would even, and the kids press you. You know, like they'll press other kids and they won't take no for an answer. Like I've seen this in real, like, where are you from? Like, where you be at? And then the other guy will be trying to deny it. Oh man, I'd be at the crib, man. I don't be on none of that. And then they'll just keep on pressing him, and they just will not believe anything he says. Like the kids sometimes used to press me, like a middle-aged white guy. They'd be like, yeah, what you is? You know, I know you something like you, and like some of them were joking, but some of them were not joking. You know, and it's like the culture here is so entrenched with that gang stuff, man, that it's like impossible to get away from. You have to physically remove yourself from the environment. But the kids, you know, for some of the kids, I mean, they're drawn to that. You know, some kids are drawn to that. I'm not saying that was the case with Little Ronald, but yeah, everybody all the older sisters, all the moms, everybody who's had the idea to just get their sons straight up out of that environment is is thinking the right way. And the moms who say that, well, you know, my son's not involved in any of that. Like we live over by such and such, but, you know, my son doesn't get involved in that. He's off. You know, he's just, that's not the way to think about it at all whatsoever, because he knows somebody. He's hanging out with somebody. He's involved with somebody. Even if it's just like on some business or whatever, he's involved with somebody that's into something, that's from somewhere, that's got some enemy, and, you know, it's unavoidable. So, you know, rest in peace to these two young guys, man. And, you know, they're facing pressures that, like, and even grown people can't deal with. A lot of people on social media were just, you know, jumping to conclusions and judging Lil Tuda, not Lil Ronald. I didn't see the reaction to Lil Ronald, but a lot of people were judging him, and these people had absolutely no idea what they were talking about. Like, they were coming at this from the perspective of the 90s, where you had to go and join a gang. Like, you have to actually go. You have to read up on the lit. You have to get jumped in. You have to, you know, jump through all these hoops to actually join this. In 2023, you don't join a gang. Like, the gang joins you. You just move to a particular spot, and then you're just in it. And there's nothing you can do to get out of it. You know, no matter where you go, who you talk, they're going to ask where you're from. Okay, well, you give them your address. That's the only answer they need. Like, you don't have to say I'm this or I'm that. Like, the gang that he was, you know, claiming, Lil Tuda, it was a set of Gangster Disciples and Stones. Like, what type of set is that? GDs and Stones clicked up? From a 90s perspective, that thing is impossible. But like I said, it's just the address these days. So the people on social media that were just judging him, if they moved to that neighborhood, they'd be, you know, the social media posts about them would be saying the same thing. They were from such and such set. Well, did they choose to be in that set? No. But where you live, you're just in it. So, yeah, rest in peace to both of these kids, man. And, you know, people should never judge. That was really upsetting, even to me, to read all that stuff, like them thinking they knew everything about this kid and, you know, how he had gotten involved in this. And they had no idea. They had no idea, man. Rest in peace to both of these kids, man. And to all the moms out there and all the sisters and everything, force him. I mean, force him. If you're able to force him to move, do it. Because I'm telling you, like, for anybody that's living in these neighborhoods, you know, as a person that's worked in the high schools, I've seen this firsthand. The peer pressure is insane, and you don't want your son around that. Your boy Winnie State Report. I'm out.